but we are going to start, at least in DC, the nation's capital, or let's call it Landover, Maryland, technically. Of course, the Washington Commanders are finally being sold, or at least that's what seems to be the case. You never really know until we hit triple zeros, especially with Dan Snyder. This ends Dan Snyder's, or presumably will end Dan Snyder's reign as, in my mind, by far the worst owner in the NFL, and you can make your case in all of sports. Just going through it, multiple sexual assault charges in house under Dan Snyder. Obviously a situation where the environments, they had a player report card, and I believe the Washington Commanders as a franchise got an F-, the only franchise to do that. And then one of the crazier stories that, just really shows you the type of person Dan Snyder is. You go back to 2009. He sued a 77-year-old grandmother who was a real estate agent and was a season ticket holder for quite some time. And if you know anything about 2008, 2009, you probably know one of the jobs you didn't want to have, unfortunately, was a real estate agent. She couldn't make the payments. She asked if they could please let her out of that contract. Dan Snyder said no. This man, worth over $2 billion, decided to come after your grandmother for $66,000. Now, after, some public outcry, he didn't force her to pay, but I think that really shows you the type of owner that Dan Snyder was. We do have Washington native Josh Harris. He will be the face of the group that presumably will buy the Commanders. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The Washington Commanders look to be finally out from underneath the thumb of Dan Snyder.
Yeah, by all means, he's not that young, but boy, it just seems like he must be centuries old, because he was the prototype for Ebenezer Scrooge. I mean, he truly, truly is. To go after, the story you just told and all the other sordid things that have gone on. And I'm glad to see him gone. I hope he stays out of the league. And to me, on the positive side, it really speaks to to Coach Rivera, to those players that have been there the last couple of years, because as beat up and bloodied as they were, literally, boy, these guys hung in there and they played some okay ball. The best ball, no, but boy, they were more competitive than a lot of us thought they were going to be at the start of the last two seasons. Hats off to them, and I'm hoping this change in ownership really, really plays in favor for Coach Rivera. I know you and I and Coach, all three of us are in agreement that is one quality character and one quality man. And so hats off to the organization. I hope the NFL doesn't take too long to do their review of the deal and just, signs it, endorses it, and gives them the ownership. It's interesting. It's quite a group there. We got old Magic Johnson on board again, and he's got his fingers in the Dodgers. And he's a good guy, and he understands competition and what players need. So hopefully he will have enough say or enough input from that perspective that will help make good, solid decisions on behalf of the organization. Mitchell Rails, the other guy, his brother, and he founded a company called Colfax, which, if you ever did anything in industry, commercial engineering and things like that, they were big in industrial pumps. And he's also big in a company called Enovus, which is more medical technology. And then back in the day, I believe it was his dad owned a radio station, and then he took over the radio station. I believe he converted it into a sports talk deal. So he's kind of like a fan, and no pun intended, because he did Thompson fans, but he is a sports fan that wants to be involved. Now, this Josh Harris guy is a different animal. You and I collect baseball cards, football cards. This guy collects sports teams. He's got an MBA out of Harvard. He's got big bucks. He worked as an investor, general partner, managing partner of Philadelphia 76ers, the New Jersey Devils, which means he also owns pretty much the Prudential Center, the Utica Comets of the American Hockey League, Dignitas, which is an esports venture. He's got a controlling interest in Ripken Baseball, which was started and founded by Cal Ripken, which is a youth sports organization. And he's got an 18% interest in the Premier League's Crystal Palace Football Club, which is of the Union of European Football. That's big time. And then he also, at one point, I don't believe he does now, but at one point he did have a small interest in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a guy who wants to have success, who wants to be successful. Watch out for the Commanders over the next couple of years. I have a feeling he's going to do good things for the organization.
Yeah, that's a great call. Thank you for that information on the Crystal Palace. I actually, my stepfather was born in London, in
Oh,
Croydon, and that's his club. They play in the Premier League. So I hear it all the time. And hey, their nickname, and they don't really have mascots over there, but they're called the Eagles. So hey, that's right up my alley as
wow.
well. I know it all comes full circle. It's all about me, remember? But no, I will say, for the franchise, I think you brought up Ron Rivera, and I think he was kind of the perfect yin to the yang. And I don't know if I got those backwards, or yang to the yin, whatever. But you had this Dan Snyder over here, who Ebenezer Scrooge might be the most diplomatic comparison you can give. I'm sure there's some worse comparisons that we're not going to get into here on the pod, but I like that. Ebenezer Scrooge as Dan Snyder, or Dan Snyder as Ebenezer Scrooge, I should say. That works perfectly. But then you, of course, have Ron Rivera, who has been through it all. He's been on the field. He was on some fantastic teams. Worked his way up through the defensive side of things. Ended up getting a head coaching job. Got a little derailed through cancer. Fought through that. And if you know the guy, you heard him speak, you're not surprised that he fought and took down cancer. And here he is. He made a playoff. He made the playoffs with Taylor Heineke. Now I know there was kind of a mishmash of quarterbacks that year, but hey, they got the job done. I think they did that all in spite of Dan Snyder. And I will say this: $6 billion for the Washington Commanders. I shudder at the thought. If the Commanders go for $6 billion, the Yankees got to be close to 20, 25, because the Washington Commanders, a lot of times when you look at these sports franchises, you alluded to it earlier when you talked about one of the partners in this owning a portion of the Devils. Well, he also owns a portion in the Prudential Center. Never been to the Prudential Center. Don't really know a whole lot about it. However, I do know, I believe it's called FedEx Field right now. What I know about it is not good. It's kind of, if you know anything about the Oakland A's Coliseum in baseball, it's maybe a step up from that. And that is not an area where you want to be. So, obviously it probably turned into a bidding war, and I still go back to the Don Sterling selling the Clippers, and somehow that goes for $3 billion. The Clippers of all franchises, and this is pre-Kawhi, pre-Chris Paul, pre those guys, and that went for almost $3 billion. So, I think we're seeing the inflation of sports franchises, but if it gets people like Dan Snyder out of there, I'm all for it. But like you said, I think there's a cleanup, an inevitable cleanup that has to come in, kind of, I would say, level it. You have to start from scratch. Obviously stadium and stuff like that is a little tough to deal with, because it's not like Washington, D.C. is just full of acreage for something like that, hence why they were in Landover. But I think they have some cleaning up to do. But as you said, once they kind of get their foundation, the NFC East really has some owners that, for better or worse, might not like Jerry Jones, but he goes out and at the very least he tries to win.
Wants to win.
Yeah, and it might not always work, but you can look and go, okay, well, Jerry's going for it. But that whole division, throw Jeffrey Lurie and the Maras in there as well, that hopefully will kind of take a little bit of a black eye off of that, the ownership of the Commanders. So
I just imagine Ron Rivera over the last few seasons, he gets his guys in the locker room and he says, okay, I got two things for you. Don't read the newspaper, and when the old man walks in here, just smile and nod, but don't engage. He really he has to be just ignore the weird uncle that walks into the room. Okay, and we'll take care of business the way we take care of business. And on another side, similar but not similar, I will say this, let me be nonpartisan here. To all you Charger fans out there, there's hope. Maybe the Spanoses will go by the wayside soon.
Yeah, and look, I am not pro Spanos. I'm the opposite. I'm anti Spanos, but I don't think they were on the level. Now, what Spanos did to the city of San Diego, not. Terrible, but we never got to the point of sexual assault running rampant, or absolutely this or that. Not. Yeah, so Spanos, I would like to see that franchise be sold. And I feel like for the Spanos right now, they are, I always say this in air quotes if you're listening, there are air quotes when I say this, but they're NFL poor. They are on the bottom level Correct. Of owner capital. It's pretty much all tied into that franchise. And the Davis, Mark Davis as well. Now, luckily he's got his own city and his own stadium, so he's doing much better. But yeah, I think Spanos might be looking around going, oh, we might be able to get 8 billion, 10 billion. And if you know anything about the kind of internal struggle of the Spanos kids, that might be something that's coming soon, but we shall see. But yeah, for now, hopefully the Commanders are out from underneath the thumb of Dan Snyder.